Hello, I'm Bryony Weavers. I'm a research assistant and I've been working in the department for over 3.5 years now. My main area of research is anxiety and depression in young people. I'm currently working on a project with Dr. Rhys Bevan-Jones that is supported by the Wolfson Centre. We are setting up a trial to test an app aimed at improving depressive and anxiety symptoms in adolescents. The piece of research I'm going to talk to you about today is something that myself and colleagues spent about 2 years working on. It used a large general population sample to investigate adolescent depression. We looked at what precedes the onset of depressive symptoms, why some people go on to develop severe, long-lasting symptoms and others seemingly recover, and what the outcomes were in early adult life. The main aim of the research was to differentiate adolescent depressive symptoms that continued and worsened in early adulthood and from those that desisted. We looked at risk factors that preceded adolescence, such as childhood neglect, parental addiction, and bullying. And we also looked at outcomes in early adulthood, such as education and employment status, self-harm, and general functioning. We also considered genetic risk and adolescent stress and academic performance. We looked at all of these factors to try to better understand adolescent depression and be able to identify those who were at the greatest risk of developing persistent depression. To do this, we used a modelling technique called latent class growth analysis. This identified groups of young people whose depressive symptoms showed different patterns over time. We used data from over 4,000 people from the ages of 10 to 25. Overall, we found 4 patterns or groups of depressive symptoms. The first was a stable, low-risk group who showed very low levels of depressive symptoms throughout. The second was an adult onset group who showed increasing symptoms in early adulthood. The final 2 are the focus of this paper, and both onset in adolescence. One increased rapidly in early adolescence and persisted into early adult life. This was named the adolescent persistent group. The other depressive symptoms began later in adolescence and remitted by the early 20s, and this was named the adolescent limited group. We found several distinctions between these 2 groups. Firstly, the adolescent persistent group showed high rates of depressive symptoms earlier in adolescence compared to the limited group. They were showing clinically relevant depressive symptoms at around age 13 compared to age 17 in the limited group. Secondly, the adolescent persistent group showed extremely poor adult outcomes, with high rates of self-harm, over a quarter not in education or employment, and nearly 2/3 having problems with daily functioning due to mental health difficulties. The adolescents whose depressive symptoms desisted showed good early adult outcomes in comparison, suggesting that the depressive symptoms they experienced in adolescence did not have any long-term effects. And by early adulthood, they were no different to the stable low group. The adolescent persistent group were also more likely to experience adverse childhood experiences, suggesting a need to address early trauma in those showing depressive symptoms. All of these findings help to identify adolescents who are at the highest risk of experiencing severe, ongoing depressive symptoms. And this is the first step to changing the course of persistent depression in these young people. An earlier onset of depressive symptoms was shown to be a key distinction between those who developed persistent symptoms versus those whose symptoms ceased, and therefore encouraging help seeking and providing extra support for those younger teenagers experiencing symptoms is important. However, more needs to be done given the extremely poor adult outcomes shown by this group. Getting a detailed social and educational history from young people or their carers may be helpful for clinicians to identify those at risk. However, this would take time and resources that many facilities do not have at the moment. The recognition of adverse childhood experiences is also important, as those in the adolescent persistent group were most likely to have experienced trauma in childhood. This emphasizes the need for more informed and focused services. Many young people with depressive symptoms do not access services that are available, and more needs to be done to overcome the barriers to help seeking. This research really emphasises the need for services to recognise young people experiencing depressive symptoms, provide early interventions, especially for those at high risk of persistent depression, and maintain this support over time to promote recovery and positive adult outcomes.